For people in my generation who were born in the post-90s internet era, Google is an important part of our lives. Since its inception, Google has been a tremendous boost to people's capacity to learn, and with it, knowledge is no longer confined in university libraries. Without Google, the internet may be a very different place, particularly when it comes to our access to information. One striking advantage of Google's products is how consistently essential they are to productive activities. Think about Google Search and YouTube. Can you imagine your life without any of these services? The ability to quickly access information and knowledge is essential to learning and growth, and Google is the platform of choice for most people. Enter TikTok. The latest stats puts TikTok as the most visited website in the world, surpassing the traffics of Google and Facebook. It is not an exaggeration to say that Google is worried. The last time I chatted with a senior person at Google, he said, and I quote, "Internally, there's no higher priority than YouTube Shorts for us. This is pretty evident in the premium real estate YouTube Shorts tab occupies in the YouTube app." Long story short, Google for the first time in 20 years is worried. It is wary of the real possibility of TikTok killing its unchallenged money printer for 20 years, the two biggest search engines in the world, Google and YouTube. But Google has no short of competitors over the years, including many formidable social giants like Facebook and very recently Vine, which was supposed to be a similar short video service provider like TikTok. So what made TikTok different? How has Facebook failed to challenge Google, and what makes TikTok a different kind of competitor than Facebook and many other ad providers in the internet space? Hey, before we start, I'd like to introduce to you my newsletter, Disrupted. If you like business analysis and are curious about how our world operates, be sure to subscribe to the newsletter in the link down below. I'll see you there. First of all, advertising is still the king of Google's business. Out of the $182 billion that Google made in 2020, $147 billion are from Google's ad services, which means Google makes money from the ads you see every day when you surf the web or before you watch any YouTube videos. The point is even more clear if we look at Google's operating income. For Google's latest quarterly earnings ended in June 2021, Google basically made all of its money from Google advertisement. But how is Google able to maintain its advertising leadership over the years? This is one of the most misunderstood factor about Google. People take Google's category leadership for granted. In fact, it is a classic case of monopoly by enacting an impossible moat. Google's unbreakable moat includes Chrome, Android, YouTube, and Google Search. According to the latest numbers from StatCounter.com, Google Chrome is the absolute monopoly in the browser market, taking over 60% of the market share, with Safari at a straight strong 20%, Firefox at 4%, and Samsung Internet 2.8%. Over 2 billion people have used Chrome, making it omnipresent anywhere across all platforms on all devices. Yet it is free, and you know what people say. If you don't pay for the product, you are the product. And if you look at the numbers more closely, what it shows is basically that Chrome takes almost all of the market share in the PC and desktop market, whereas Apple closed its ecosystem off to outsiders. The most ironic thing when it comes to Google's Chrome strategy is how familiar it is looking at the history of browsers. Microsoft did exactly the same thing in the old days. The chronology is that PC predates internet. At the beginning of the 1990s, Windows was designed to be a productivity tool with Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. The internet was not at all a defining feature of a PC. In fact, when Netscape Navigator, the world's first web browser, was invented, Microsoft has not even created Internet Explorer. The only reason why Microsoft set one up was because Steve Ballmer, then VP of Microsoft, had discovered on a sales trip that most of his big corporate clients were complaining that Windows didn't have a TCP IP stack, i.e. a way of connecting to the internet. He was furious. Under this backdrop, Netscape Navigator spread like a wildfire, and its founder furiously speculated, hubristically, that the browser would eventually become the only piece of software that a computer users really needed, therefore relegating the operating system to a mere life support system for the browser. This possibility terrified the leadership at Microsoft, culminating in Bill Gates waging war in the browser market. This document in particular is an internal memo of Bill Gates in May 1995 explaining to his executives why internet is important, and effectively, as The Guardian puts it, ordered its subordinates to throw all the company's resources into launching a single-minded attack on the web browser market. And it worked. Microsoft eventually won the fight and edged out Navigator in the early 2000s, making Internet Explorer the default browser on millions of Windows PCs. The fight was won, but Microsoft had also paid a huge price. Governments around the world waged antitrust wars against Microsoft, which almost broke up the company. Chrome and the entire open source market is a response to the corporate greed of Microsoft stifling innovation and bullying smaller companies with its full might. Just a decade later, history has repeated itself, but this time, Microsoft was on the receiving end. The oppressor has become the oppressed. When the founder of Netscape Navigator hubristically speculated that internet browser will reduce operating system to a mere life support system, it was ridiculous and laughed at. But right now, I'm not so sure if that's wrong. Think about your daily interactions with your PCs. If you're like me who spends a lot of time on various technology and engineering websites researching and writing, Chrome is absolutely sufficient. In fact, Chrome was famous for sandboxing its browser tabs to interact directly with processors, making each tab a separate application similar to applications on your smartphones. Chrome takes up so much resources that you can run Google Documents, YouTube, Netflix, and several other resource-heavy applications in one browser. In that sense, Chrome is a platform on top of the Windows operating system that acts as a gateway to the internet. Before Chrome, browsers were just another application in parallel with other productivity tools such as Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint presentation, but after Chrome, it's Chrome and everything else. Chrome became our default application for everything online. Netscape's founder's prediction has come true. Here we arrive at the key of today's video. Where does Chrome derive real power over us? Is it the search service, its video services, or its map services, or maybe its advertising services? Those are services that we use which makes Google money. Since we're paying them, it must mean that they're irreplaceable parts of our lives, right? I would venture to suggest that it's none of those, as most of them can be replaced by alternative ad services, map services, or even search services. The only thing that can't be replaced is the infrastructure of the entire internet. In this case, they're Google Chrome and the Android. I have no doubt that Google is one of, if not the best, ad service providers in the world, but its primary strength comes from its ability to keep people in the ecosystem. The more consumers' hours spent on Google's app, the more ads that can be served. Both Chrome and Android are free on paper, yet precisely because of them, Google became an irreplaceable part of our lives. We use many Google applications not because it's the best out there, though sometimes it is, but because it comes with the operating system or a web browser. Just like how Microsoft makes Lenovo PCs the empty shell that hosts Windows, Google has successfully made Samsung or Huawei smartphone the shell that hosts the Android system. If you don't believe me, all you have to do is check Huawei's market share now after Google banned Huawei from using its Android system. Now, the idea of Google services being replaceable might be unfamiliar to you, and I understand that. It is very hard for us to imagine living without Google's map, YouTube videos, and above all, the search services, but in China, the situation is completely different. It is worthwhile for us to explore how Google's only surviving alternatives Baidu is doing in China. This is valuable for the discussion since Baidu provides almost all services Google provides, except that it does not have power of Chrome and Android. So here's the summary. Baidu is doing very, very badly. If we compare the market capitalization between Chinese internet giants and their American counterparts, Alibaba versus Amazon, Tencent versus Facebook, they're all in the hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of market capitalization. 300 to 900 billion for Alibaba, Tencent, and Facebook. And in the case of Amazon, well, $2 trillion. But you would find very different realities for the search engines of China versus the United States, and here are the numbers. See the difference? Baidu lags far behind Google in terms of market capitalization. Though both of them make money with the same ad services, their fate are completely the opposite, precisely because of the lack of Android and Chrome for Baidu. Digging deeper into Baidu's situation, starting with its search services, unlike Google in the United States, the tech scene in China is competitive and gladiatorial. WeChat, Taobao, and Weibo, the Facebook, Amazon, and Twitter of China all denied Baidu's access to their web pages. What it means is that when when you search on Baidu, most of the internet cannot be even found, rendering Baidu unusable. Since people in China use Chrome, Internet Explorer, Firefox, and UC, a local Chinese browser, Baidu is also not the default search engine in the first place, rendering Baidu nothing but an internal search engine for the content made by Baidu affiliated publishers. It's like Google search that gives only results from YouTube videos and Google Maps. It's really bad. Same thing goes to other Baidu services like Baidu Cloud, Baidu News, and Baidu Videos. Without the support infrastructure of Android and Chrome, Baidu is an island that defies the fundamentals of a search service. Short of Android, Baidu cannot be ubiquitous on smartphones, and short of Chrome, Baidu cannot be ubiquitous on desktops. So now that I've established that Google is basically unbeatable in the internet sector with Chrome and Android, why should Google be worried about TikTok? What is different this time? Well, first of all, Google has faced a formidable foe in Facebook a decade ago. Google predates Facebook. Google started in 1998 and Facebook started in 2004. Facebook started to turn a profit more than 10 years after Google did. And to be frank, even this timeline would have been delayed if not for the mobile revolution. Looking at Google's revenue growth, the trend is healthy, with a CAGR of 15%. If we break this number down into search and display ads categories though, we can see a fuller picture. Google's dominance in the search ads category is not only unchallenged, but its monopoly status is also growing, with now over 80% of the total market share in the United States, and Facebook is nowhere to be found in this list. Facebook is a much more formidable competitor in the display ads category, but the core point I'm trying to share here is that Google and Facebook provide fundamentally different services, and users are on these platforms for different reasons. Google is a platform where users join to access information, and Facebook is primarily a social network that people go to for connecting with friends and killing some time. Secondly, Facebook's dominance is largely mobile. Looking at Facebook's growth by mobile and desktop, you can see that in absolute dollar numbers, Facebook's desktop advertising revenue is anemic, whereas its mobile ad revenue rises exponentially. This is not to say that Google is worry-free when it comes to threats from Facebook, but it does show that Facebook so far has not been able to cannibalize Google's core audiences at their core use cases. Enter TikTok. In recent years, two important paradigm shifts in the tech space now fundamentally changed Google's game. Number one, the fall of internet and x86 architecture, and number two, TikTok and its superior algorithm that merges what's useful with what's viral. Apple's recent launch of M1 chips built on ARM architecture and its foray into the desktop space with the M1, M1 Pro, and M1 Max, in my opinion, is the game changer. From 2013 to 2021, the operating system market share of Windows has dropped from 91% to 73% as of December 2021. Needless to say, most of those market share was absorbed by Apple. With the launch of M1 series chips, it is obvious that this trend will continue, therefore exposing Google's first weakness in Chrome. I'd expect the rise of Safari in relation to Chrome. Additionally, Google is not oblivious to its weakness in hardware. It has tried multiple times to launch its hardware product, including Google Nexus, Pixel phones, and its Chromebooks. Those failed attempts demonstrates to me Google's inability to manage a global electronic supply chain. Top internet companies are often ecosystem players, vertically and horizontally integrated so as to achieve a dynamic equilibrium with powerful control over its users. These companies compete on multiple fronts, and their competition is analogous to a military war. Under a dynamic equilibrium resulted from years of competition, all parties are deadlocked. They engage in a war of attrition, a grinding process to win tiny fractions of market share. However, when a vulnerability gets exposed, a full-scale Normandy attack may ensue. The capital will do what it does best, pursuing profits. This is precisely why the rise of TikTok is so intolerable for Google. Google has already failed in the arena of hardware, which weakens evidently the market share of Chrome and Android. TikTok has proven itself to be a formidable competitor in the video content space. What's even worse, TikTok is famous for its recommendation engines. The Wall Street Journal has recently written multiple times to investigate TikTok's secretive algorithm and is amazed by how quickly TikTok gets to know everyone. This is the ultimate nightmare of Google, a competitor that not only is chipping away YouTube's market share, but also has a supposedly better recommendation algorithm that suggests content that users are more interested in. It's not just about YouTube, it's about search as well. Coming back to Google's moat, Chrome, Android, YouTube, and Google Search, any military strategist would tell you that the worst type of war anyone can involve himself in is a war on multiple fronts. This is how Germany lost World War II fighting both the Allies and the USSR. Unfortunately, with TikTok, Google is now in this position, war on multiple fronts, with little hope to win any of them. And this possibility is evident in TikTok's track record. Its parent company Baidu started its business with Toutiao, a news recommendation service that is notoriously addictive because it knows what type of news to suggest to its users and how to keep users engaged on the platform.